As far as an agenda review, I know no issues with the agenda as it's submitted, so I'd like to just accept the agenda as is. Next item is the pledge of allegiance. So please stand and join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't think I've ever said this like that before. It felt like it was doing it alone. Okay, next item on the agenda is visitors. Do we have any visitors that wish to speak? John.
I've just posted the directions for them, so if we can give them 1 minute to identify themselves.
Okay.
Is that the lead up there? Yes, for a minute.
Do we know who the person whose name is Orange is?
No.
I'm not sure if I need to introduce myself, but my name is Chris Saber, and I'm on the board of the complex, and I'm here to present a community project that we've been working on up there. So,
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Chris. I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure who you were.
Yeah.
And
Okay, Nilda, it doesn't look like anyone's identifying themselves for public comment just yet.
no one's identified to want to speak. Okay, if I don't hear anyone that wants to speak in the visitors section, I'm going to move on. So going once, going twice, gone. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. Anybody need to bring any of those items forward for discussion? Hearing none, we'll accept the consent agenda as is. Next item is item 5, reports to the board. We have the Collins Pearly Sports and Fitness Center report, and we have Chris Sabarine, also known as Orange, here to give a report. So is there any intro that's happening, Bill, or are we just going to turn it over to Chris? Oh, there he is.
Chris is there, and
That's the real name.
yeah, Chris is there, and I don't know, Tim, you want to do a little bit of an introduction maybe of Chris? Tim Vance?
Not quite sure what you said, Bill.
I didn't catch either, Bill. No, I guess
Yeah.
what you said. Chris Saber is on our board. He's a treasurer. Chris has been a member of the board for a little less than 2 years now, I believe. Fine young man, works for Kevin Manahan at AM Peisch, and Chris was an outstanding athlete here at BFA, along with Benny Roberts, who has joined the meeting. And they have, the city has an interest, the people have an interest in a turf field at the Collins Pearly. And Chris and Ben have been doing a lot of research on it, and our board felt we should let the MRUSD.
well, thanks, Tim, for that introduction. Thank you to the board for allowing us to speak. It's something me and Ben Roberts have put a lot of time into, and we think based off our history of athletics, from youth, from our Phantom days, SASA days, Steeler days, to our high school days, playing BFA football, BFA hockey, BFA lacrosse. And then we were both fortunate enough to play a collegiate sport. And my sport being football, I had the opportunity to play on a lot of turf fields around New England. From that, looking back at the complex, one of our biggest things growing up was our youth programs always wanted to get on the varsity field, the game field. That was always under the lights. That was always the best thing. Unfortunately, because of a natural field, the complex was not able to allow every single youth sport in town to get on that field because it would have been destroyed. And that's where you bring in the artificial turf field. The turf field is a benefit to the whole community. It benefits everybody. The usage rate from a natural grass field to a turf field skyrockets. When you take into account Norwich has a turf field. They run every single sport on that field. They shovel it off from February on for spring sports. Being in northern Vermont where the winters are awfully tough, I can speak from experience and from just watching the men's and women's lacrosse programs or any spring sport. A lot of times they are delayed or games have been canceled because we have not been able to allow them to get on the field because of just natural grass. The turf field, I think, is a humongous benefit to the community. I think it's a humongous recruiting tactic, to be honest, for the Maple Run School District when you take into account places like Georgia or Sheldon or any competing interest school that could go to South Burlington or Burlington, any of those schools that already have turf fields. And I think it's a great opportunity for BFA to upgrade the facility. I know we've put in bathrooms. The St. Albans Football Organization partnered with Maple Run a couple years ago for the bathrooms. And that has been a massive success. You talk to elderly people that have been up there. You talk about people who are walking the path, people that go to BFA games on Friday nights or Saturday nights or whatever night. That's a huge step in the right direction as far as, having bathrooms out there, and that'd be part of the stadium like atmosphere, having a turf field there. So that's my pitch to you as the board. And, it's a project that, like I said, the complex board has been working on diligently. Me, Ben, and a couple other board members have taken trips to other turf fields around New England to check them out, to evaluate them, see what we would like for turfs. We've had the actual turf company come up and do soil testing on the game field to evaluate the soil and how that could play a role in the engineering and project costs. And I don't know, Tim, did you submit that packet that I sent you or we talked about yesterday? Okay, so you'll see there's a couple renderings of the field, and there's also a initial proposal that includes engineering costs and initial setup. And this whole project probably started pretty much as soon as I got on the board, I believe. And I know it's been a question for years, talking to previous board members on the complex board. It's always been, talking to Dan Marlowe, the athletic director, it's always been an item of interest that we thought potentially could benefit not only BFA as a primary user, but our local sports, our youth sports. And the project from start to finish would be a little bit over $1 million, about 1.1 million. The project itself, from start to finish, when they're building the actual turf field, if they start in May, it could be done for the fall seasons. It's a pretty quick project when they get in and they get working on the project. And that's really my pitch. I think, Benny, if you want to step in and say anything about it, that'd be much appreciated, and always willing to answer questions or comments or concerns.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that, the name of the game is, we're always looking to upgrade, always looking to find ways to improve our offerings at the complex. Like Chris alluded to, the recent upgrades with the bathrooms, the many things we've done, the recent weight room, upgrades. We're lucky to have such a nice facility, and staying on top of that and continue to improve and upgrade that is key. I think a turf field is long overdue in our area. We pride ourselves on kids playing multiple sports, kids playing, all kinds of different sports and activities, and a turf field would really go to help and support that. I can remember playing lacrosse and having to practice out on the gravel because we weren't able to get out on our fields. We're, a school like South Burlington or Burlington or Rutland, they're able to practice because, they've got a turf field and they're able to utilize it in the spring season. And I think, outside, like Chris alluded to, as a young kid, the complex wouldn't necessarily have to worry about overusage, and you'd be able to get, whether it's the Phantoms, youth soccer, Steeler football, you name the sport, you get, youth softball out there when the fields are wet, early season, because it's available. I think that there's a tremendous benefit there. And I think it's something that's very, it's definitely long overdue in our area.
And I would
Thanks,
just like to add that we have thought about turf up here for many years. One of our original plans is have it out on the northern lacrosse field, but there was going to need drainage, lights, bleachers, bathroom facilities. The stadium field, we have one of the best stadium fields in the state. We have the lights, we have the track, we have the new bathroom facilities, thanks to Friends of Football. And a turf field would be a tremendous boost to the community, to the supervisory union and the community in the whole, because it allows people to get on the fields. Quite often our spring teams, their first game is when they're on a full field for the first time. So it is really something, like I said, Benny and Chris especially have been working hard on this, and we just want to let the board know what we're working on, and we'll be back with more information. Anybody have any questions?
No, I think I'm muted.
Neely, you're muted. Now you're frozen.
Are you muted again?
How about you, Grant?
I have a question. I see the
You're
price
muted,
tag.
Nilda.
I don't know. Should I wait for? I'll wait for Nilda.
I've been muted by the system, I think, because I had trouble getting unmuted. So Grant, why don't you ask your question since you
Yeah.
waited so patiently?
So I saw the price tag. I'm wondering what the maintenance on a field like that is. If it's more, just if it not, I don't need exact numbers. I'm just wondering if it's more or less what
You
we
know-
spend currently.
Surprisingly, Grant, it's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I've worked it all out. The man hours, mowing, fertilizing, grass seed,
Mhm.
aerating. You do different things with the turf field, and there is more maintenance. A lot of people think, but really, it's almost a wash.
Okay. What is the maintenance? Is it replacing?
Well, you have to
components, or-
vibrate it. You go to some fields, they don't take care of it, and the filling is, you have to rake it, vibrate it. There's a lot of different things you have to do to it.
Okay.
Alicia, looks like her hand's raised.
Thanks, and thanks for the presentation. I would just ask that the complex board look at this with community engagement through the equity lens that the board has started working through, and making sure that the other groups that we have accessing the field, that we're making sure we have equitable and inclusive practices for use of the field. And I don't know what that looks like, but I just wanted to kind of say that as we're working through our equity and inclusion work.
I agree. I think we're all aware of that now.
Thanks,
And yeah,
Alicia.
Alicia, that's a great point. When you think in terms of a usage rate for a field like this, we allude to sports, me and Ben were, sports really growing up, but with the usage of the field, anybody can use it. And like I've told Tim and Ben and Brett and a lot of people on the, it's a part of the complex board, is this is really a community field that can be used, from 7 in the morning to 9, 10 at night. And it's got lights on it. It could be used in the weekend. I mean, we're not talking sports. You're talking fitness groups. You're talking any kind of child youth activity that is outside can be used on this turf field, which is a really nice benefit. Yeah.
Thank you. So my dumb question is, what's the life cycle of a turf field? I mean, 10 years and you have to, I mean, I'm saying probably stupid things like replace it, or do you just add layers to it? Or what do you do to it to keep it?
Yeah, my bad answer is it depends. My good answer is, typically, depending on how you keep up with the maintenance, it can last anywhere from 15 to probably 20, a little over 20 years. This company that we have looked into, they have put in Rutland's turf and they have put in Norwich's turf. They've put in, I think they're the biggest New England turf installation group. And, we've been to a part of our field trip, me and Ben, we went to a few turf fields that have had very poor maintenance, and it's very evident. And then we've gone to fields that have very nice maintenance has been done very well, and it looks like a brand new field, and it's been 10 years old. Or you can look at a field that's had terrible maintenance, and you look at it and it says, wow, that field's in tough shape, and it's only 5 years old.
Gotcha.
And I think that speaks a lot to what Tim and Mark have done at the complex. Is their maintenance crew is very knowledgeable, very up to date, and would definitely stay on top of it. The company that we're actually looking at, or the company we're looking at using, and they provide ongoing knowledge and kind of a couple skill classes that you could say on how to properly use the equipment to maintain the field. But take Rutland, for example. That field's close to, I think, 15 or 20 years old, and you step on that field and it looks great. It's a really nice field, and they just so yeah. Bad answers depends, but good answer, you could anywhere from 15 to over 20 years depending on the maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you. Looks like Nina and John, and I didn't see whose hand went up first, so I'm just going to call on Nina first.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, Nilda, thanks for asking the question. I was going to ask the same one, but also too, is the field going to be, it's probably the same usage as what it's going to be today. Is it going to be free to everybody, or is it going to have some fees associated with it? Because I know we want to open it up to the public, and I know everybody's been waiting for turf, but is it going to be like a usage by fee too, or is it going to be free?
It would depend on the users.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now we have Steeler football up there. We don't charge Steeler football.
Yep.
We have St. Albans Recreation Soccer up there. We don't charge them. It would depend on the user. If someone was making money off it, we would charge them. So
Okay.
we'd have to set up a schedule, and it's to be decided.
And then just to be clear, the turf you're talking about, I mean, I saw the presentation and attached, it's going to be the complete football field. Is that correct? That would have the soccer on it as well. You're looking to put the turf there? Is that correct? Yep. Okay.
It would have soccer, men's and women's soccer, men's football, and men's and women's lacrosse.
Okay.
Lines on it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you have a question?
Yeah, no, I did. The question is, you said it was open to the public. Does that mean that on a particularly rainy afternoon, a dad wants to go up there and toss the ball with his son? Is it open for them, or is it only for organized sports?
I would have no problem with that, Peter. We have people up here all the time using the fields.
And there would be some rules, as far as, putting food on the, bringing food on the field. You'd have to have some kind of rules, people bringing drinks on the field, that stuff that shouldn't be on the fields anyway. There'd have to be some kind of rules or guidance, but,
Yeah.
definitely if, anybody wants to use it. And keep in mind, this turf field is not meant to be a major revenue source. I don't think that's the point of a community field is for, to be honest. Our goal is to provide as much usage to the community as possible. And that's not necessarily charging X amount of dollars because we want to profit off it.
Exactly.
I don't think that'd be the goal of the complex. The goal of the complex is to provide usage rates that are 5, 10, 15, 20 times more than what they are now for the community, is what the goal is.
Right.
Thank you. It looks like Joanna has a question.
Hey, just wanted to ask, would there be conflict with track
No.
in terms of lacrosse?
Well, it's a scheduling. We wouldn't schedule a lacrosse game during track. Like we wouldn't schedule there wouldn't be conflicts like that. No.
And the beauty of the, the field is there are lights, right? So, if, you have a track meet at 4:30 where you can do a lacrosse game at 7
I'm
o'clock.
sorry, Ben, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I don't think I'm on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
From a scheduling standpoint, the beauty of the field and where we are looking to do it, there's lights on the field. So if there was a 4:30 track meet, we could do a 7 o'clock lacrosse game or lacrosse practice or for whatever whatever the sport is for that meet.
Joanna, we're like Grand Central Station up here. We have 100 different things going on at the same time. So that wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grant.
Yeah, do you guys have a sense for where you anticipate the funds are going to come from? Is it going to be 100% from MRUSD? Is it going to be split between Maple Run and some other organization? And
I think that's the great question. That was part of the plan of why we wanted to address the Maple Run first. BFA is the primary user. They own the building, the land, but we also have a significant interest in private donors. I think it'd be silly to ask Maple Run to foot the bill. I don't think that's part of our plan at all. Most of our plan would be a combination of private donors as much as we can, and BFA being the primary user would have some skin in the game, but by no means would we, in any of our plans, have we've ever discussed Maple Run footing the whole bill.
have you discussed asking going to the various municipalities? Is that on the table or not?
The short answer is we wanted to kind of stay away from any kind of a bond. We just feel like with what's going on with the pandemic, I don't think it'd be fair to ask for everybody to be included on a bond vote. And to be honest, I don't know if it would go over well.
Whatever happened, we got
Right.
silenced.
So I think a private donor situation would be much more beneficial with a combination of Maple Run School District and a combination of maybe even local youth organizations, that will be used, that will have the opportunity to use the field. And again, that's stuff we're kind of sorting out in the, short term and long term to try to figure out where the funding is going to come from.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else have questions? All right, well, thank you, Chris and Ben and Tim and whomever else spoke, and we look forward to your more detailed presentation in the future.
Definitely. No,
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, take care.
You as
Nice to
well.
nice to see you, Ben. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, next item is students and staff demographic data. Bill's going to present that, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Hilda. As you guys have all, before I get into the presentation, I just want to say, as you've been experiencing, we've had a few Zoom callers that have come in that have been inappropriate, and John's trying to stay on top of that, otherwise known as Zoom bombing. So he's taking care of that as best he can, and we'll try to stay on top of it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. There were two handouts. One came out when the board pack came out, and one came out today that we're going to follow up on a report I gave you back in September on the student demographics, and then we've added in their staff demographics. And I thought I'd just walk through quickly through each page and explain it, and then take some questions at the end. And when Hilda and I were talking about tonight's meeting, we thought it was better if I just walk through this, because this report is not one that we've done before in the past, or it's been a while. So I just wanted to explain each page. I will tell you, there's times where you'll say, wait a minute, it doesn't add up when you do the math to the total, and that's because if ever there would be a cell of data that's 10 or less, it shouldn't be represented. We need to take that data out according to Vermont's rules for student privacy on data release. And I think I got all of them, but if I left one, you'll let me know at a later date, and we'll correct it so it's not out there in public. So on page 2, John, can you go to the project the packet? So if you scroll down, John, the second page. So this first table is just enrollment by grade level by year from 2010, school year 2010, 2011, 2022, 23 projection. And one of the reasons I think it's good to give this student demographic data and staff demographic data right before we get into the budget is to know the composition of the school district as we start talking about budget. So as I explained back in September, there's an official fall count that happens in Vermont schools around the 1st of October. And this year that's completed, and we know that our official fall enrollment is 2,791 across all of Maple Run schools from pre-K to 12. As you can see, there's quite a bit of an uptick from last year, and from previous years, we're coming back up. In next year, one of the things we I did a quick analysis here and looked at what the estimate for next school year would be for budgeting. And what we did was move every grade level up one grade, assume the same number of pre-K kids that we have for this year and next year, and added the average tuition students to the 9th grade. So you see that we're expecting about 10 more kids. Okay, John, if we can go on to the next one, you'll just see a graph of that historical that you saw all the way over on the right-hand column. And then you'll see the grade level enrollment by school and by program, just another way to look at the same data for this year. So you can start to look at each year, at each grade level, at each school currently. If you go on to the next page, you also have a graph of that. And then below that, one of the things that's interesting, and we'll probably talk more about it at a later budget meeting, but is to look at the class size across the Maple Run at each school district. And I've been looking at, if we look at the Vermont education quality standards and what the recommendation are, it's recommended for K through 3 to have an average class size below 18, and from 4th through 12th grade. Well said. For the average class size from 4th to 12th grade to average 20, but not to be any greater than 25. So we're actually doing, from my experience of looking at several different districts, in the 4 different districts I've worked in Vermont, Maple Run's doing really well. We're pretty close to where we should be for those averages, and we exceed the maximums in a few places. You'll see the range and the averages for each school. And in some schools, and Fairfield's a good example, for the younger classrooms, the rooms are so small that having more than probably 15 kids in them just wouldn't meet a space requirement pre-COVID. So we kind of have to take that into account, a little bit of our physical space. So I'm going to go on to page 5. Page 5, I probably should add this a little bit in a different order, but here's the tuition students by grade by year. We actually have that broken down by town, that we know where that's coming from. We've had a lot of talk about that for BFA. And then below that is you see the average class size by department. And I would want to point out the phys ed where you see 55, you may say, wow, that's really large. But what the teachers do is they team teach it. They have 2 teachers together teaching 50. They try to go for 50 kids. It's been large this year. And so I just wanted to give you those. And this is taking all the sections taught in those departments, unless the section's less than 5, because I know I'll take, for instance, some work that's done in design tech. Mr. Samulia might have 2 or 3 classes going at the same section time. So during the second block, he might have woodworking 1, 2, and 3 going at the same time, but it looks like there's only 2 kids enrolled in woodworking 3, maybe 5 in woodworking 2, and 6 or 7 in woodworking 1. So we took those out because it doesn't give a true analysis, or the independent studies that happen. As you look at page 6, we're moving over to the race and ethnicity data for Maple Run. I wanted to show this to you. I think it's a good benchmark for us to look at when we're asking questions of equity, and we're looking at other data. You will notice down below on the table, there's some places that are blocked out because the numbers there are less than 10 or equal or less than 10. And we do, when you see Pacific Island there, that's blank. We do have Students identify a specific islander for the race, but all those would be their example of being an example. The totals are correct. So like I said, they don't necessarily add up, but they're there. Go on to the next, to page 7. We can look at our free and reduced lunch. Some points to note here is Fairfield Center School, the number of students qualifying for free or reduced lunch has been dropping over the past few years. And after next school year, they may no longer qualify for what's known as school-wide Title I supports. And SATEC has had about a 9 to 10% increase over the past year in their free and reduced lunch. So they're increasing. And at the high school, while it says 24.2%, one of the things that happens for all the federal grants is you can roll up the free and reduced lunch percentage from the K-8 schools and give that to the high school. That's not done in this table, but that is because we have a hard time getting return of applications at the high school in particular, and that's done nationally as well. One of the things Nilda asked me earlier about to just make a note of here, we are getting a good return rate from parents for free and reduced lunches this year and last year, even though everyone gets free meals this year. So we feel like these are good numbers. So
what is the percentage that it has to be at in order to get?
to qualify for Title I, it's 40%.
40, okay.
So that's the student data, and I'll stop there and ask any questions on students before I go on to staff.
Got a quick question.
Go ahead.
On page two.
Yes.
I think I understand how you did your estimate for everything except for kindergarten. Maybe page 3.
Yeah, kindergarten. No, you're on page 2. Kindergarten maybe should have brought that 195 should have come into kindergarten. Yeah, I see that. It's a good catch there, Grant. We'll take.
So does that mean, okay.
We would take this year's pre-K number and put it in kindergarten. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all.
Currently, we have the screen down. All we can look at is the projection. So no, I don't know if folks have their hands raised.
I don't either. So if anybody has questions, you just need to speak up, please, because I can't see the people because I'm looking at the presentation.
Nobody has their hand raised just now. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to the staff data. This is more, it's the first time we've looked at staff data, at least in the past 3 years here. I'm sure it's been done before, but really wanted to give you what the number of employees and the full-time equivalent of employees, almost all of our employees, not quite, they work full-time. So I want you to see this by not only by the number of employees, but the labor agreements, either professional teachers, education support personnel, ESP, those are 2 association contracts, are non-union employees and administrators. So you can see the number of employees by buildings, and then see, so on page 8, you see that in a full-time equivalent. And then down at the bottom is that data in a table. And then on page 9 is the same, is the number of employees, not necessarily full-time equivalents. And you can see that as well. And below that, just for our teachers, are the highest degree level that we have on record here in their personnel files. You can see a great deal, I don't have the percentage, but a majority of our teachers have a master's level degree or above. So that talks to the great experience and wealth of knowledge our staff have. We know that through research that teachers with higher degrees have higher outcomes with students. John, if you want to move on to the next page. These next 2 pages, just for the teacher, is just the years of service to the district and their age distribution. You'll see that we tend to have a below 15. I haven't done a median or mean average of this, but we have below 15 years of experience for most of our teachers. While if you look at the distribution in age, it's quite even. Haven't done any summary analysis of why that is. I do know just from anecdotal data of interviewing folks and talking with candidates for the past 3 years, that we have people that come to us, some straight out of pre-service teaching and pre-service education, to folks looking at changing career into an education field. So we have both going on. And the last one is just a gender profile of our teaching staff. About 72% of it is female, as you can see there, and you can see that distributed across the different schools. How that is. And I think there's one more attachment, John. I don't know if you have access to that. I also gave you the special ed child count data. We have 575 students that are supported with an IEP. I did have, you'll see there's many cells here blanked out because I can't have, be able to calculate or have a number 10 or less. So you really just see the totals by school and overall for the district. And then I gave you some data on the ESP staff, again, years in district. We have most of our staff for ESP are less than 10 years of experience, and you can see that in the table as well. You're going to see the same similar analysis you did the teacher, so I'm not going to spend as much time on it. Again, the age distribution for the ESP staff, and then the gender distribution for our ESP staff. 80% of our ESP staff are female. And then the same thing for non-union, which is a lot smaller number, but we tend to have most people under 10 years of experience. While there are some that have been here for a long time and perfect service to the district. Just keep transferring through. It's the same. It's more data on different groups, but it's the same format. And again, the gender there for the non-union staff. So, John, I think you can stop projecting. I'd be glad to take questions, and we can.
Anyone have any questions related to the data that in report that Bill just presented? Joanna.
I don't know that I have a question that I am asking for an answer today, but as we're looking at this data, because I haven't had a chance to really digest it yet, in terms of staff equity, ratio, in terms of students to staff, or just equity amongst the schools, has that been anything that you've currently looked at or plan to look at?
So when we looked at the staffing, Joanna, that's why I looked at the student to staff ratio. That's usually the most. That's usually the first measure that's done on that, and looking at the number of staff to student. And we have done that. I did that last year for some federal reporting requirements, and looked at, and we're required by federal statute for receiving federal grants that our schools with the highest poverty have the lowest ratio. And so we recomputed that for this year. But what I was saying to a few people today as colleagues on the leadership team, doing this work this past week is really, because I think I've said this many times to all of you, I think in numbers first, it's just the way my brain works. And doing this actually really disproves some of my assumptions I had and confirms some of the assumptions I had. And one of the things it disproved, I thought we had a greater inequity in class ratios. And I was pleasantly surprised at how close we are across our schools and within our schools. So I know that, having put out sections before in different school configurations, that you may have a grade level team or a vertical team that might have like a 3, 4, 5. Not all of them where you might have 80 kids in 4 sections, or you're going to necessarily have 20 in each section. Because sometimes there's certain reasons why you make some decisions, and that you have to allow for that flexibility to meet student needs. So I was pleasantly surprised with that. The piece that we're starting to look at is, and it was a community comment about 2 or 3 months ago when bringing up the weighting study, so we're starting to look at that via these, our resources in our budget, but the leadership team hasn't concluded that analysis yet.
Thank you. Alicia?
Thanks. Just wondering, how is this data collected from the student group and then from the staff group?
So from the student group, it comes through our student information system, and it comes from there. That's collected when students enroll in the school, and is updated when there are changes and we know of changes. With the staff, it's on employment time, and when they have, I believe once a year, there is an ask for folks to check their demographic data, but I would have to check into that to make sure of that, Alicia.
Okay, so some of it is in our control and some of it is outside of our control with as far as the form and language.
I'm not following your question, Alicia.
Well, I'm just the categories don't seem to be completely inclusive, and I just wonder, do we have areas if people choose not to say if they identify as male or female, or if they're non-binary, or I'm just trying to say, are we sure that we're including all of the different options here?
No, that's a good question. I would have to look into that and what people have on the forms. This was data dumped out of our personnel system and out of our student management system. So I'd have to look into that.
And I know it's early in the reporting. It just struck me as I was looking at the data, like there may be categories or there may be times that people didn't feel like there was a box that applied to them potentially.
Right. And we have some limitations based on what the state and the feds require us to report. So I'd have to look into that too. I do know that we allow folks not to report racial and ethnicity data. And I know that's an option on that piece. I can't tell you about gender at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Grant? You have to unmute.
Thank you. So, the ratios for the student teacher ratios you were commenting look good, but, I see a lot of, if I read those bar charts right, it looks like we have quite a high number of teachers coming up sort of in the age where they tend to retire. And then also we have increasing enrollment. Do you anticipate over the next year or two that those are going to be challenges, to stay staffed at the level we need to maintain those ratios?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to my leadership team colleagues about this because this was done and came right to the board. I want to say that first. Second, so I don't want to speak for everyone. I can speak for my own analysis because I'm the only one that's had a chance to discuss this, which is that I believe that we have a couple of challenges that I see coming ahead. We have quite a few new teachers here that need support coming into Maple Run. And that's not abnormal in any school system because if I talk to my colleagues, superintendents, what we're noticing is what students who come out of pre-service and come from their college education doesn't mean that they're ready to teach in the school district in which they're working. So we have a lot of work there because we had more. One of the things I was surprised about was actually how many new staff we have. I knew we had a bunch, but when I look at the percentage, it's pretty high. And I know that John Muldoon's been working on that with the leadership team, developing professional development and the teacher coaches as well, and designing that for next year. The second thing that I do notice is I'm actually surprised that we don't have more teachers that are, I thought we would have more teachers that were above 60 years old, just to put it that bluntly. And I was surprised at how few we had. When I look at my experience from across Vermont, I would have expected a higher degree of teachers in the 50 years plus. I actually think we're in better shape than most Vermont schools in that room.
Thanks, Bill. Nina, looks like, Nina, you have a question?
Yeah, so yeah, it's like a big data dump. So kind of what along the lines of what Grant was asking. So, and Bill, you may be going down this road anyway. What is all this data for? I mean, what are you going to use it? I mean, we got a report. Is there going to be some analysis kind of tagged to it as we move through this? Like, okay, we have this and we're using it, and I don't know, just more of a, I don't know. more analytic, I don't know, more analyzing the data and kind of more outputs of it. Because like I said, it's a big report, which is great information, but then what are we going to use it for?
Right. So I think the big thing that helps for the district, this is where it helps me, and I'm going to say it that way. I want to say it directly that way. And one of the things that we talked about in providing reports was providing data to all of you. So we talked about that in our retreat, and we're doing that. So we're giving you the data. I'm doing it deliberately without analysis right now. But if I were a board member, some of the key questions I'd be having going into budget time, are we increasing enrollment? Are we lowering enrollment? Are we staying flat? Where is our teacher? Where are we deploying our teachers? We were asked by the public, like I said a couple months ago, about how are we equitably distributing our budget across schools, across the needs of our kids. So knowing, I can't give you all the information in a public setting because I've got to protect the kids, but like when you see, the reason I'm producing free and reduced lunch numbers is to see federally, a free and reduced lunch is not the only indicator, but it's one indicator that's used a lot for students at risk. Just because you have free and reduced lunch doesn't mean you're at risk, but it's an indicator of where the school may be and how many services it needs to provide. Same when you look at English as language learners, but I couldn't even give you that data because our number's so small. And so I said I can tell you that for the district we have 14 of them, but I can't disaggregate it any more than that. And so it's knowing the composition of the district and what it looks like, and having that thought as we go into budget time, and also knowing what our staff looks like and the composition of, just like what Grant was asking, does it look like we're going to have to start, it looks like we might have we have a bubble of older staff coming, or we're going to have to replace them sooner than later, and what does that do when I'm a board member thinking about budget? Because there's a cost for our retirement side letter we have with the association. There's a cost for that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm looking for is kind of like, we go through this, it's a big data dump, and start having those conversations, start having us, get used to that and asking those types of questions, because we're not used to seeing those reports. And, maybe if you could kind of guide, like, okay, we pulled this because we're thinking this, or, maybe just kind of start off again, and then do we really need all that information too? And then hone in and just kind of, maybe get other information, like Alicia said, maybe pull some other stuff that we need that would be more useful. But no, it's good. It's a good start, Bill, but thank you very much. But I think we just need more analysis and more, more probing around what we're going to get out of it. Again, we're starting that, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Joanna.
Yeah, I just, I just want to say thank you, Bill, for putting that information together. I feel like we've been asking for this information, and we've got to start somewhere. And you have to start with the basic information, and that is population, and that is student-teacher ratios, and that is the free and reduced numbers, special ed numbers. So this is, we need to have a foundational, understanding of what the demographics are of our schools in order to be able to move forward. So I think this information is very important, and I think that it would be wonderful for us to take some time with it to be able to understand the deeper meanings that this information has. So thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Susan.
So I just want to say I found it helpful, just even looking at page 3 and then comparing it to the teachers that are, maybe going to be retiring. It looks like after in 4 years, the student population that's currently coming through is going to be significantly reduced. If after the current 9th graders graduate, it looks, if you look all the way back to pre-K, it doesn't, grade 4 is the only one that reaches 200 versus grade 9, 10, 11, and certainly 9, 10, and 11 that are over 200. So, to me, that kind of is helpful in terms of looking ahead in terms of budgeting, what kind of teacher staff we're going to need. So I think by looking at this, we can get a lot of really good information. So,
Susan, what-
thank you, Bill.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. The one thing I would point out to you is you do that, because I did that at first, and then I said, oh, I forgot the tuition students. And at 9th grade, we get about a 45 student bump every year. So when you compare the high school to the pre-K8, you need to add about 45 students a year.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, Bill, because I know that we said that this year's 9th grade class was way larger than anybody anticipated, but it didn't show that in these numbers. So thank you for clarifying that.
You have to realize that tuition from what we get from Sheldon, Georgia, Alberg, a few other towns, gives us about, right now on average, on the 9th grade, we've had as high as, in the past 5 years, we've had as high as 62 and as low as 38, and the average is 45.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any questions related to the student and staff demographic data? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 7A, which is old business. And the first topic is the COVID update. Bill.
Yeah, not a lot of new things to report here since we last met the middle of November. We talked about Test to Stay and how that's been going. I know that we have quite a few students using Test to Stay. I don't have the current numbers as of this morning where we were at, and we have quite a few families taking advantage of that. I do want to say that for some of you, you know this, I think everyone's heard, but some of our neighbor schools had to shut down, and that quickly affected staff in our district. So I do want to say, and I'll talk about this more in the superintendent's report under some thank yous, but we are seeing the effects that the rest of the county and the rest of the state is seeing with the high COVID numbers, and it's affecting our staff. Well, it's affecting our students and our families. What is probably going to make us, may have to make us shut down the school for a day or two is a lack of staff. We ran on November 19th, I believe it was Friday before Thanksgiving week, and we took everyone we could, and we're out teaching or substituting in the schools, and we were down over 25% of staff, and that's not a safe situation, and I won't do that again. I'll be closing schools. So I just wanted to forewarn you as a board that that's one of the places we may have to go. I hope we don't have to. I know, Joanna, you've seen that in your place of work, unfortunately. But it is something that it affected us in such a way, and we went for it one day, but we wouldn't repeat it again. So.
Go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Bill. And it was a difficult time because we were down, 20 staff, and so people were thinking that we were closing because of COVID, but it really wasn't because of our high numbers. It was because we literally can't be providing the services that we should be providing to students that were in the building, and then kids who are home because of quarantine situations or whatever. We had 140 kids out, and you're just widening the gap, right? So it's no longer an equitable decision to keep the school open if more kids are not getting, the education, and IEP kids aren't getting services, and one-on-one kids aren't receiving their one-on-ones. It becomes an unsafe situation. So it was definitely a problem for us.
Thanks, Joanna. Okay, any questions related to the COVID update? Moving on to 7B, implicit bias and anti-racism training. Bill.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to bring something up on my computer, so just give me a minute. Oh, of course. Okay. Two things I wanted to bring up under this. One, the video from Dr. Brown's presentation that we were all part of is now on the school board website. It's under resources for Dr. Brown's presentation. So if you missed part of that or didn't see any of it, you can go on there and view it. Aaron, I've got that right. It's under the resources. Yeah. So you had asked at the last meeting that we get a copy of that and post it up there. So that is up there. And please feel free to take a look at it, whether you were there or not. We had access to it for everybody to relook at that I know some of us started late on that. I was one who started late as well. So that's up there. The second thing, and I've talked about this since October, about bringing together a community meeting. We've had an outside, we work with outside partners on our social emotional learning, equity and restorative practices, which is restorative partnership. And they have brought together a diverse group of community members that represent historically marginalized group to lead a discussion for the Maple Run School District on equity. And to start that discussion, it's not going to be just a one-time event, but I'm here tonight to announce first for the board, and we'll start getting flyers out as soon as tomorrow and putting that out and inviting people to it, that on December 13th at 5 p.m. at Collins Pearly, we'd like to invite all community members to be part of a discussion entitled "What Kind of Community Do We Want to Be?" We'd like to invite the community members to come together to talk about how people of color in St. Albans have been mistreated and unwelcomed. We haven't had the opportunity to come together, talk, build, and understand across differences and repair our community. None of us can do that alone. This will be an opportunity for authentic dialogue with students, community leaders, people you may know, people you may not know, people who agree with you, and people who disagree with you. This is a chance to really talk and listen and build community together by getting to know each other in ways we don't often have the chance or opportunity to do. Specifically, we're not presented that opportunity in a public meeting such as this. So I invite all the board members to be part of that. It is not a board meeting. So it won't be a public meeting, but you're invited to be there. We'll be inviting students, community members, and leaders across our community. So we love everyone to attend. We're planning for over 100. Tim's been in on this to provide the setup. It is the type of meeting that you need to be in person. It will be requiring masks. Will be done. We have facilitators coming from the outside that are experienced in facilitating small group discussion and bringing that forward. And they've done a really nice design team approach. They've given me the schematic just so I was able to talk about it tonight, but we really empowered them to do this. As well as we've had members of BFA alumnus who come from historically marginalized communities and have gone through BFA, as well as ones who have not. So we're looking at all sorts of members representing their historically marginalized groups. This is not, I want to repeat again, this is not a one-time event. This is the kickoff of probably a series of events, and we'll be talking more about that on the 16th at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock. I'll be putting out flyers everywhere along with others. I invite everyone who's on this call and people who have been to meetings before to be part of that and come and join us in a facilitated conversation that they've been putting together. And I myself asked for those of us that are the leaders of Maple Run to be there, but to be there to listen. And that's specifically my role, is to listen to the community at that meeting and hear what folks have to say.
So were there to listen, who would be the speakers? Who is running this show?
The community partnership will put together a design team and they'll have facilitators in each small group. And they'll have prompts and focus questions to guide a discussion. Okay. And it's everyone that's in the circle.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill related to the community forum? Okay. Next item is 7C, and it's the negotiation meeting. So I was going to ask to change the meeting on December 13th to a different time, but now that we know that December 13th is the date of the forum meeting, that was a meeting for the professional staff team, the MRUSD team, to do some negotiation planning and training. Yeah. Yeah.
The 16th is the meeting. Did I say the 13th? I meant the 16th is the meeting day.
Oh, you did say the 13th, but it's the 6th. If it's the 16th, I'm good with that too.
That's why we're getting the flyer out. John will post it up there, 5 o'clock, December 16th. Collins Fairway.
Thank you, Bill. I was confused.
Yeah, I bet you were, Tim.
Okay, so it's the 16th. So now I'm going to rephrase what I was going to say. So there's 4 of us that are supposed to get together for sure, and then any other board members willing to come as part of training for negotiations on December 13th. I think it was 5 or 5:30. I can't remember the exact time, but anyway, I have a conflict, so I was going to ask to see if we could have that meeting at 7 on December 13th. It involves Grant, Nina, I think, Susan, and myself.
Yeah, that's a professional negotiations team, and then the ESP is on the 6th at that same time.
So that was the 13th. So Susan, Grant, Nina, can you do 7?
Yes.
That was a yes from Susan. Grant,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
thank you very much for that change. So Aaron, will you make that change and send out new invitations? And we can do that meeting either in person or via Teams, and we can figure that out later, depending on what all's going on with the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
just,
So the Collins Pearly Equity Community Meeting is on the 16th and not the 13th?
that's correct.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. I was confused too.
Yeah. So Phil's going to put out an all points bulletin on that to clarify.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to new business. The first item on the new business agenda is item 8A, and it's an adult hot meal prices. It's an action item, and we're seeking I guess I need a motion for approval to set the adult meal price at $4.75 effective January 1st, 2022. Can I please have that motion for discussion?
So moved.
Thanks, Jack. Is there a second?
Second.
Who is that?
Grant.
Grant? Thanks, Grant. Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Martha, can you present the discussion for us, please?
Sure. So I was notified, as well as all the other business managers in the state, that with the food service program that we're running this year through the child nutrition program, the reimbursement from the federal government is higher than normal, than what we would normally get. And because the reimbursement rate is higher, we can't charge less than what we're getting reimbursed from the feds for the adult meal prices. So we were requested to increase our prices to make sure that we were above that reimbursement rate. So that's the reason that this is being brought forward.
So we can't make money on this at all.
Right, the food service program, we can't be subsidizing adult meals with the food service program.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Anybody have any questions related to this item? Okay, so we have a motion to set the adult meal price rate at $4.75. I'm going to take a roll call vote. Alicia,
Yay.
Susan,
Yay.
Joanna,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Katie, Jack,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Nina.
Nilda, just a quick question. Is it 475 or 472?
We're requesting the price to be set at $4.75.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, sorry. Just reading-
Did I misspeak?
No, my bad. I was just looking at the letter. Okay, my bad. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So Nina's a yes and I'm a yes.
Yes.
So motion carries. Congratulations, Martha.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the initial budget, and we have quite a complex document that Martha, you're going to take us through, I think, to help us understand.
Joanna, you have a question?
I'm sorry.
Joanna.
I just looked at the dates. I apologize. I got to go back to what you were just talking about with the negotiations. I was just looking at the dates, and the ESP first date is December 6th.
That's
And
correct.
we're having the training on the 13th.
I think there's a December 6th training also.
You'll have your training on the 6th.
So
Okay.
one group is being trained on the 6th for ESP. The other group is being trained on the 13th for professional staff.
Oh, pardon me. Okay, I thought that was the beginning of the negotiations. Pardon me.
No, it's not. It's just us. It's not the teacher group. And
Okay,
everybody's welcome to come to either or of those meetings.
okay, all right. Thank you very much.
And the point I was making is I wanted to change that one because I have a conflict. I wanted to change that one to 7
Yep.
p.m. Thank you.
I just misunderstood. All right.
Sorry,
thank you.
I don't think I was clear enough with all that. So
That's
thanks for
okay.
bringing that back. All right, Martha, you're on.
So what you have attached to the agenda is the first draft of the FY23 expenditure budget. Now, the first thing I want to state is that this budget is coming to the school board 2 weeks earlier than it previously has come to the school board. So it's a very rough draft. I finished, or I worked on it over the holiday break, and I sent it to the leadership team only over the weekend for them to review and give me their feedback, which I'm just starting to get their feedback on. So just so everybody understands, there are going to be changes. This is nowhere near the final budget that will be presented. Because in reviewing with some of the leadership, there are places where things were missed and or maybe duplicated in reporting. So it's just in its first initial review with leadership. So this is just a first blush to kind of give you a sense of what the process will look like, most likely. So for board members that have been with me for quite a few years, this is the same format I've used for multiple years. But the first page is the one that kind of gives you just a summary of what this budget is all about. The very first top part of it gives you what this first draft looks like in comparison to the FY22 budget as it was adopted by the school board a year ago. And so right now we're showing a expense budget of 64,202,000 and some change at this point. The education spending figure that's in here is a super rough figure. There's a lot of pieces that I'm still waiting to get, but it's just to kind of get the format in place and get it going. So you take your education, your expense budget, you subtract out any local revenues that you receive. That gives you the remainder is your education spending, which is what we use to set tax rates and equalize pupil costs. Then we have the equalized pupil counts, which right now I'm using last year's numbers because we haven't gotten that information from the state. We won't get that until mid to end of December. So those numbers are going to be changing right along, probably right up until the first part of January. Then the next area, which is just underneath that first line, sorry, is just a breakdown of some of the detail that's in this budget. I've given you what the total wages costs are that are built into this budget compared to the prior year budget. A little bit of the demographic numbers as to the staffing counts. And then some high level breakdowns of the actual expenditures. The next area is where I'm showing all the information that's still outstanding for us to actually have a budget that the board would be able to adopt at this point. There's the first one is the Vermont Tax Commissioner's recommended yield, which I actually received 5 minutes before the meeting started, which made myself and the superintendent ecstatic because it will definitely change the number on that last page that everybody always looks at first, which is the one that is the tax rate calculation. So I haven't had a chance to do any of the analysis or anything, but it is definitely going to change that number that's on that last page. But some of the other pieces are the equalized pupil counts, the 6 semester average for the tech center students, the education IDEAB grant amounts, transportation aid, FY21 allowable tuition. Again, I got that just today. So that will help us decide what we want to set for our tuition rate for next year. But I haven't had a chance to look at that yet either. And at this point, I want to mention that Bill instructed to the leadership team that he wanted the leadership to present what they felt they need for the FY23 budget. So the next group of pieces of information are some new positions that have been requested to be added into this budget at this point. Does not mean that they will stay or that they will go, but they're in this budget as the first draft. There is also a large number of positions that are currently in our current year budget that we don't have filled, which, excuse me, the costs are included in this budget, but I just thought it would be interesting to see the list of some of the positions that we still haven't filled yet for this year. And we're still working on trying to fill. And then there's the announced tuition rate information, and we'll get to that at a future meeting because that does have to be set by January 15th. And that pretty much kind of gives you an overview, a general overview of how the process works. The next time you see this, I will have some of this top information still included with a second draft with a little bit more detail and different explanations of information. The next 2 pages are the summary expenditures. And like I said, they're not final. There's a lot of numbers that need to be changed in here, but I wanted you to have a sense of what the format will look like. And then the next page after that, which would be the 4th page, is the estimated revenues. And all of the orange blocks are the ones that I don't have information on. So I'm just pretty much ballparking or putting placeholders in there at this point. Again, this is a little early to be able to get to the point where we can actually predict revenues or have a good estimate to put in for the revenues. But we'll have that by the end of December, first part of January. It'll be a lot tidier and a lot tighter at that point. And the very last page is the one that everybody always sneaks to and looks at first, which is the tax rate calculation page. And as I indicated, we got some information just before the board meeting started, because on this page for FY23, I was using the current yield that was in place for the FY22 budget. The yield that was presented is significantly higher, which would then reduce the tax rate. And it was a what's it called? A news release or a press release that was sent out today at 12 o'clock, but I didn't see it until just before the meeting. The yield that the tax commissioner is proposing, now this is still not final because it gets finalized by the legislature, is proposing the yield to be set at 13,846 compared to the 11,385 that we currently have in place, which drops that tax rate significantly when we do the calculation. But as I said, there's so many estimated numbers in here that there's in no way, shape, or form this information should be taken as this is what we're going to move forward to the taxpayers. I just wanted to give everybody that context and have you get a little familiar with the process. Have any questions? I went through it very fast, so if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you.
Sure, Grant.
Yeah, I think you may have said it. The wages up at the top on page 1, it's almost a $2 million increase. That includes the new positions, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Could I ask a question? Martha, as gifted as I know you are, I know you cannot see the future, but you can see the past. And I'm wondering, as a new board member, could I see some of these same sheets for last year, the year before, just so as a new board member, I could look for trends or whatnot, which might help me.
Sure. They're on the website as they were parts of board packages, but absolutely, I can send you previous board packets from prior years.
Is, if that's the pleasure of the whole board, we can make sure everybody gets a copy, even though they're on the website. Sometimes it's handier to get them, either the link to the actual document or the document emailed to us. Would that be the pleasure of the board? Just give me like a thumbs up or something.
So Nilda, can I jump in here for a minute?
Yeah.
So this year, as I told the board before, we've been re-budget coding this whole Maple Run budget, so it's hard to compare by just looking at the reports. You will not be able to, you'll be comparing apples, oranges, pears, and cherries. So I'd rather have a specific request so that we can give you comparisons across years, because let me give you an example. The Collins-Pearlie budget was always in the BFA budget and not its own separate budget. This year, we decided to pull Collins-Pearlie, adult ed, and a few other things to put it under the district budget to have its own subcode place. So comparing those sheets from one year to another would not necessarily give you what people wanted to have. I'm more than willing to give board members whatever the board would like to have, but I want to just make sure we're giving things that can be compared across years. One of the things that Martha and I started doing back in July was we wanted to be able to give a more accurate accounting of building and district and different programs. And in order to do that, we had, Martha, as I remember I told you all back in September, she spent most of September rebuilding the whole Maple Run budget. So if you looked at prior years to this year, you couldn't necessarily get some items out of those reports and say that you have equivalent numbers.
Personally, and I understand what you're saying, I don't know what questions I want to ask until I could look at a few. And once I look at a few, I might have some specific questions, and you might be able to tell me that's because this was changed. But right now, I'm totally in the blind regarding budgets.
Okay. And then there's another part, Martha, you and I talked about this because it comes up every year. So John, I didn't tell you to do this, but there's a 6-year educational tax rate comparison that was given in this board packet that has 6 years of prior educational tax rate. So it doesn't have the CLA adjustment to it. It only has, and we showed this last year. What's new on this is that it went all the way, and last year we went back to the last year pre-merger, so fiscal year 2017. This year, one of the things I did is I adjusted, Martha and I talked this over, I adjusted the 2017 budget for the consumer price index from then until now, which has been a 9.1% growth from 2017, and said what would our tax rate in St. Albans City in fiscal year 2017 was $1.42. If we were to adjust that for inflation, so we have the correct dollars, because remember the dollar has less buying power now than it did then, we would have a tax rate of 155 this current year, and our tax rate is 149. The reason that came about is I remember having it last year, people asking, hey, wait a minute, we were supposed to see lower tax rates. You're seeing lower tax rates in the growth of the dollar. So you have to take that economic factor into account, and in there is all that for each of the 3 towns.
Right.
So
Thank you.
And you'll see for St. Albans Town, it's a savings about 10 cents in Fairfield as well when you take into the growth of the consumer price index.
So, Bill, you made a comment about Collins-Pearlie being part of BFA. I think Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a time when Collins-Pearlie had their own budget and then we ended up merging it into BFA, right?
Well, so Collins-Pearlie is a entity of its own. So there are 2 pieces.
Be nice, Martha.
There are 2 pieces to the Collins-Pearlie budget. There's the Collins-Pearlie budget that the Board of Trustees creates to manage their facility for the year. So they have to come up with their expenditures and revenue budget, just like any other entity does. the school district covers the cost for the custodial staff at Collins Pearly. And there are some management staff that are in the school district budget. And those school district costs were always embedded in the BFA part of the budget, which now we've pulled them out of the BFA part of the budget only so that we can, like Bill said, we can have more of a an education cost per school building. And so that's the piece that we're talking about. The other piece is the cost of the rent that is also embedded in the school district budget. So that's the part that we pulled out of the BFA part of the budget.
Thank you. Okay, so
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Zoom problems.
I didn't understand you, Bill.
No, you and I both started to speak at the same time, and I figured I was interrupting you just because we were both on Zoom. So go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to, I don't know what I'm trying to do, but what would be the best reports that could be shared to meet, sort of Peter's request and the rest of the board members that are trying to get educated on all this, that could, I understand that it's not apples to apples because it's just not going to be, but how, that last page, Martha, what you refer to as the last page that everybody goes to look at the tax rate, that is available because that's been public information forever, right? Mm-hmm. So that can be looked at, but you don't see the derivation of those numbers. So I'm asking the question, like, what would be the best reports that could be provided or looked at, or even, I'm trying to help the board members understand the best we can. So I'm open to suggestions.
So I think if you look at page 1 and page 2 and then page 3 of the page 1 and 2 are the expenditure report that's in the packet after it's actually page 2 and 3, because the first page is a summary that Martha provided. And then on 4 are the revenues. And those give you basically the big areas to look at. Mm-hmm. But then you're gonna have to ask, because I know between those areas, not only just this year, but other years, things have moved around. And so it's gotta be, we have to dig into that and say, where have things been moved around?
Right. But let's say we got pages 1, 2, and 3 of the last 4 years or previous 4 years. Then board members could look at the numbers, since they're in the similar format as Martha mentioned, and somebody could see like a $40,000 variance between one line item on one year and another. That would prompt the question, and then there would be an explanation, right? Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of. And, we may need to either have an extended meeting to talk about this, or a special board meeting. I want the board members to feel comfortable in what they're looking at and understanding it. And this ain't a simple budget to understand. And I've been looking at these for years and I can't pretend to understand it. So I feel for people who want to understand it even better. So I don't know what's the board thing. If you got pages 1, 2, and 3 of the previous 4 years, would that be helpful?
I believe it would, Nelda. I would support that. I would like that. Thank you.
Anyone else like to see that? Grant, you have a question?
Yeah, if the objective is just to understand major changes year on year, could we just ask that, that be discussed with us at some point, rather than try to hunt it down and figure it out for ourselves and do like a, semi-audit in a way.
That's also a good idea. That would take some time. That's going to take some time for someone to prepare that discussion, but it is true. Martha's the expert and she's going to know those things.
Right. So, yes, it takes the time, but it sounds like we're going to ask them to take the time either to explain it to us, having asked them pointed questions, or, sort of spoon feed it to us in a sense. And I don't know what's better. I'm happy to do it either way, but it seems like if it's going to be explained to us either way, maybe just a more holistic, this is what's different and this is why.
Right. I'm trying to create a balance between having people have to do a lot of extra work for us, but yet making sure the board understands what's going on so we can do our due diligence, right? Because this is a big responsibility for us to present the best budget we can, and we need to understand it at least enough to do that. So, I mean, I'm happy to leave it up to Bill and Martha to come up with sort of a presentation. Bill, what do you think? Do you think that's reasonable to sort of come up with here are some of the differences and this is why we did them? Or I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
So well, to help you out, I'd rather have the pointed questions, that's areas we want to go look in, because we're going to have to do quite a bit of digging. One of the things I wish we had, but we don't, is remember we've had to change financial systems twice during the merger. Once into Infinite Visions, and then the state forced us into the state system. I wish I could say, without having to sit and talk with people, I could grab stuff out of the computer report, but I can't. So we can.
But there's no archived information?
Not in the way you think it is, Nelda. It's one of those things where, yes, are the numbers archived? Yeah, the numbers are archived. But I don't know what a total is necessarily without going back and like researching into our HR system. Okay, what were and our HR system doesn't tie in by the function, it does by the function codes, and then having to figure out what jobs were coded to those lines. It's not that simple. And I'm going to be taking people off of work that they're doing day to day anyway to move into doing that historical archive, especially back 4 years.
Yeah.
And I also want to mention that over the last 4 years, AOE has been working towards changing the chart of accounts. And almost every year we have been required and requested to make changes of where we've coded things. So just as an example, the instructional coaches, the staff that we had working as instructional coaches in the past have been coded in under direct instruction. And this year they've requested that we move that into a different line item. So that whole group of staff in previous years were charged or showed in direct instruction, and now they're not. They're showed in somewhere else. And to be able to go back in 4 years for every line item to be able to say, well, this is why this is so much different from last year, it's going to be a task.
Can I just say, it seems like we have had the discussions in the past, though, when we're going through like that big budget that's many pages long that looks at the line items. It seems like we have had the discussions when someone says, it looks like this has jumped by 12%. What is that? Well, that's because
right.
Now we're putting something different in that count,
Yes.
but you'll see a reduction in 12% by, in this other,
Yes.
category. So at least knowing, kind of having that kind of information would be helpful. That, yeah, it's jumped by 12%, but, now it's reduced in this other area by this much. And so, I don't know, that's the helpful information for me.
Yeah, Susan, that's relatively easy for this year to last year. It's going back for 4 years or 5 years. That's really hard to do that.
Well, maybe 4 years is too much. Joanna?
We've also had the conversation that Martha lets us know what money is actually flexible and what money is not, meaning where we have the ability to make changes and where we don't. And so I personally would be most interested in hearing from Martha in those areas, right? So, in this chunk of area, we have the ability to, this is where we could make some cuts, or this is where it would not impact academic programs, or this is where it would not impact, student safety, whatever it is. So I think that we have to put our trust into Martha in terms of what parts of the budget are have more room to play than others. Because I don't think we should be sitting there, dickering over the special education, part, because there really just isn't any, there's no movement there. So we have control over some parts of the budget and no control over, or very little control over other parts. So I think it would be most important to just focus on the parts that we actually do have control over, I guess is what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Thank you for your
That makes sense.
confidence,
And I
but-
think the reality is, Martha, it's a pretty low percentage that we have control over, right?
Right.
Because
Yes.
salary and benefits takes a huge chunk of the budget.
Right, and those are typically negotiated, which we have a negotiation that's going to be starting for next year's budget. Bless you.
Oh, excuse me.
And I appreciate your confidence, but it's not necessarily just me that makes any determination on what can and can't be cut from the budget. That's a leadership and mostly the superintendent that makes those decisions. And as far
Right.
as staffing goes, we do have some flexibility with staffing, but not on necessarily on what the current staffing will receive as salary benefits type of information.
Right. Right, but you certainly have in the past pointed out areas that are pretty much untouchable versus where we have some latitude.
Exactly.
Well, so we just did a bunch of talking and I don't know if we came up with anything as far as helping educate. And
Nilda,
yes, ma'am.
what about the community presentations that we've done over the last 4 years? Like, we've done public meetings and talked about the changes and talked about the budget and presented it in bite-sized ways. Could we pull those together on a place that you can click and look at? Or if we give people the board dates that we had these conversations and presentations, you can access the minutes or the work that's already been done. And then this can be a school board member's responsibility to dig in and get the information they're looking for.
We do have those presentations saved, right, Martha, over the
Yeah.
years, and it's basically the same. Once again, it's the same format. We just we move the numbers around to make it work, but it's sort of broken down into city rate, town rate, Fairfield rate, CLA, all that stuff. So maybe that's another option.
And I believe those are on the website as well.
They should all be on the board website link. I know Peter had a question on that.
Yeah, I guess this now reminded me of the time we spent 45 minutes to talk about how to shorten the minutes. And it's kind of like, I just asked for what I have this year for last year, and I understand it's not apples to apples, I understand that. And if I have questions, or if the board has questions, then we can bring them and say, why is this such? But that's all I'm looking for, is something that I can compare it to, and I don't have to go back 4 years, go back 2 years, just so that I can try to get an idea of the trend that this district is heading and where we're spending money. And I can see, I look at this and I'm thinking, that's a lot of money, but I don't know if it's a lot of money compared to what we have in the past. And that's all I'm looking for, something that I can learn from. And I don't need a meeting of it. I can sit down with the numbers at home and look at it and come up with questions, and I'm sure Bill will answer them or Martha can answer them. I have no doubt about that. But I just, like I said, I'm not looking for secret information. I'm just looking for what has been open to the public in the past.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting you're looking for secret information, but if we think people will be satisfied with getting page 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this presentation going back like last year and just last year and this year, or do you want last year? Is that enough for now? I guess a start.
Last year and this year would be fine.
All right, well, then I think we understand that. Does that make sense for people? And then we can go also look back at some of those presentations. I mean, I understand we can all find those online, but sometimes it's you got to know what date you're looking for in order to find what you're looking for, but.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm willing to offer that myself or someone I can find in this office can put together some links in an email along with giving those reports and getting something together so people can go back and choose what they want to look at.
Yeah, that would be great if it could be one.
Yeah, let me work on that and get something out by at the latest next Monday, but hopefully soon.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
That sounds good. All right, well, we probably spent more time on that than we need to, but thank you.
All right, Milda, can I do a little preview of coming meetings, just so we're all aware of where we're going? Because the board needs to adopt a budget by the second meeting in January. So at the next meeting in December, we'll have some revenues, but not all revenues. We'll have some data. But I'm going to look for a reaction from the board. Not complete direction, but reaction of like how you're seeing the numbers, and so we can do work as a leadership team. In January, we'll need to know, like, have we hit the mark? Like, if I look right now at the per pupil expenditure increase of 5.7 something %, which goes on the ballot, I myself think that's too high. I don't, and what I've learned about St. Albans in 3 years, like, that's a too high percentage to be on the ballot. I don't need a target, but we'll need some direction. In first meeting in January, we'll need a lot more, like, here's the target to get to, leadership team, and then we'll have that for you. And we'll have a lot better idea of all the revenues and other numbers that go into setting tax rates and all that. So, thank you. I just wanted to give that preview.
Okay, thank you. And I think if we do need to have a special meeting to meet our timelines, we would just have to do that. Joanna has a question.
Yeah, well, it's just a statement. Bill, I hear what you're saying, and I guess my concern is that we still haven't figured out what our goals are. And so we're going to be voting on a budget where, you need direction monetarily and we need direction goal-wise. And that to me is potentially even should come before, right? So I'm happy to have a special meeting as well, but I think that we need to have the conversation about goals as well as future monetary direction, because the goals should be leading our direction.
Totally agree. But I just don't know if we can get all that done in a budget at the same time.
Right. We need more hours in the day. Okay, good point. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Thanks, Martha, for that review and for getting it out 2 weeks early. Okay, next item on the agenda is the warrants. I need a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board member participating remotely. Can I have that motion, please?
Moved.
I'll second.
Is that Grant and Nina?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, no. We're gonna do a roll. Alicia,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
and Nilda says yes. Also, thank you, everyone. And the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Bill.
Yes, a couple things I wanted to go over here. Some I've already talked about, but some of it I may repeat just to be clear with everyone. At the last meeting when we were talking about the district liaison report, we had a discussion about weapons. And I just want to be really clear that if there were a firearm in schools, this board would know it. Because I'm required statutorily to have a hearing with the board for a firearm. While I couldn't give you all the weapons I need to protect that, I want to assure the board, because I did have some few questions after the meeting, that if there were a firearm, you would know it because we would be having a special meeting to have a hearing before the board. I'm required by Vermont statute to do that. So I'm basically saying those 3 weapons were not a gun. So I just wanted to clear that up. There are many other things that can be considered weapons. So from a bat to a knife to something, a pair of scissors could be good, if the intent was there. I did speak earlier about our staffing concerns. I'm just going to reiterate. I do want to let you know if we're looking at about 25% staff reduction in a building because of staff being out, we're probably going to shut down. And we will do that the night before to help families and parents and students know. We want to do it as soon as we can. But we also have an estimate. We can look at our data back from what we know at about 8 p.m. to what happens at 6 a.m. and there's differences. So we kind of have an estimate of like, okay, if we see this number of people out at 6 p.m., what do we think 6 a.m. is going to look like? So I can't tell you it'll be an exact number somewhere. There isn't an exact number. It's this is where we think we're at. I wanted to give you an update on Fairfield. Just again, can't thank the staff up there enough. They're doing a great job. Casey Provost, who's up there, is the interim through December. We did place an ad for an interim principal. We have some internal candidates that would be willing to work out and help. I'm working with the leadership team at Fairfield Center School to start an interview process probably next week. We've been putting together some questions and criterion rubric for an interim principal. So we're working on that. Again, they're doing a great job. I really thank that. We're also going to be posting for an admin assistant at Fairfield very shortly. I know that's happening this week. I just don't know if it's gotten up as of today. Casey and I talked about that yesterday. The last thing I'd like to bring to the board's attention is that next meeting, Nilda and I have talked about this. We'd like to invite the BFA Social Justice Club to come and present some data that they've collected from the student body on raising a Black Lives Matter flag at our schools across Maple Run. And so I'd like you to hear that presentation from the students and the work they've done. And then for the board, I would suggest that you look at, and I know other boards in Vermont, and I've done this in my past as well, have looked at flag adoption, a policy on flags that are being flown at schools. And I would suggest to the board, I can bring you some drafts. I was part of one of the first ones in the state, and there are many of them that are modeled off of that I could bring to the board to look at. So I think that's something for the board to talk about with the community and how that's judged. One of the things I think is really appropriate is that there's student work behind it. So I'll let you see those as well. So I just wanted to kind of forecast that the students have done a great job in the way they've been talking with their peers up at BFA about that. So, and I know it's happened in other schools as well. I shouldn't say it's just BFA, but it's the BFA Social Justice Club who's going to come and present. Because I know there's been conversation at pre-K as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Bill on his superintendent report? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to item 8C, board announcements. Anybody have any board announcements? Nina.
Just want to give a shout out to the BFA, the play that was Into the Woods. Went to see it. It was awesome. You can tell that they didn't put so much work and time into it, and it was just, and I'm getting chills just talking about it. So everybody that did participated and got that going. It was awesome, and thank you very much. And so I just wanted to give a shout out for that.
Thanks, Nina. Anyone else? Oh, I see a hand up, but I'm going to ignore it.
You can't, Nilda.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you. So one of the things that, and I'd made this decision before this presentation from Dr. Brown, but one of the things Dr. Brown said in his presentation that I went to, he said, "What privileges will you give up in the name of equity?" And so I've decided that I'm not running for reelection in March. And I'm really hopeful that by me not running, it's an opportunity for more engagement from a more diverse population and some people with different perspective and different voice to be on.
You kind of cut out. Did you stop talking or did you cut out? Alicia, you're cutting, you're not speaking.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
I can. You kind of cut out partway there.
So I just hope you all heard that I said thank you for your work, and I appreciate your voices and the time that you've spent in service to the kids in our community.
Well, thank you, Alicia. Your presence will be missed for sure. But we'll use you as much as we can from now until the election. Anyone else have any board announcements? I'm seeing none. Items for future agenda, we have a note here that the 5-year plan is going to be presented at the next meeting in December, at the second meeting in December, which is 2 weeks from tonight. We can take budget off this because budget is going to be just a recurring thing. And then we need to plan for the IT study. And then, Bill, I think I want to add here goal setting as just to keep it on our radar. Just, I'm going to use those terms for lack of a better word, but it's probably mission, vision, values, you know, whatever we need to do. And anything else as far as agendas for future items? Okay, seeing none, we have no need for executive session. Is there any more business that needs to come before the board? Seeing none, I am going to adjourn this meeting and it's 7:51.